So you make a distinction between somebodies and nobodies, but do you think that everyone experiences being on both sides at different points in their life or different areas of their lives?
Yes, exactly. I do. I think we've all had the experience of being taken for a nobody. Young children are often taken for nobodies, and old men are taken for nobodies, and everybody gets taken for a nobody by somebody who regards himself or herself as more important. And we're also, though, all of us at times in our life in the somebody role, because, for example, we may have a younger sister or brother, or we may be on a team where there's somebody who's not as good as we are, and then we're the somebody to them. And when you are the somebody to a nobody, when you outrank somebody, it's very important not to translate that into a sense of superiority. It's very important to treat the person of lower rank, which we're just informally calling a nobody here, just to use the vernacular. It's important to treat that person with equal dignity. And that's the problem. Very often, people who regard themselves as somebodies do not treat people who they regard as nobodies with equal dignity. They humiliate them. They shame them. They tease them. They make fun of them. That's where all the trouble begins.
So since it may partially be human nature to have this sense of rankism, why do you think young children feel the need for it? Is it just for attention, or is it because it's part of human nature?
It's part of our culture. And it's more part of our culture than it is human nature, if by human nature you mean something so fundamental that it can't be changed. I think our software, our organization of our minds can be changed. I've seen that in overcoming attitudes of racism in America in the last half century. I'm seeing it now in the way America is changing its attitudes about homosexuality. I've seen it in the way we treat the elderly. We treat them a lot better than we did when I was a kid. Or a wonderful example is people with mental disabilities or physical disabilities. When I was a child, it was open season on those people. You were free to insult them. And I remember there was one boy in my high school who had Down syndrome. Well, he wasn't in the high school, needless to say. He hung around outside looking through the fence at us, and he was mercilessly teased and reduced to tears regularly. And now that kind of behavior is really almost unthinkable. It would not happen. We can change our wiring. Little children pick up patterns of bullying and what I would call rankist patterns by watching television, by witnessing their parents who indulge in it thoughtlessly, mindlessly. Just as for generations, children picked up racist attitudes by imitating the adult world. Well, when the adult world gets on to rankism and begins to disallow it, children will pick it up much less. We won't have the bullying problems we have in schools today. Children aren't naturally that way. They learn it. They learn it from adults and they learn it from television, because humiliation is a staple of television. If you watch television, it's just a sideshow in systematic humiliation of contestants and losers in these reality shows.
You said that rankism is a deeply ingrained part of our culture, but not necessarily part of human nature. How do you think that it came about to be so deeply ingrained?
I think if you look at our long history as a species, going back tens of thousands of years, we evolved out of animals that were predators, and we ourselves are predators. And predation has worked well for us because we're smart enough actually to team up on other animals and beat them at the rough, tough game in the wilderness of predation. we were so good at it, in fact, that we realized we could turn it on each other. And once we had the wherewithal to make armies, that's just what we did as a species. So history of the human race is the history of our wars, of our predations, and the history is told by the winners of those wars. And so predation is a strategy that we have used, and some of us at least have prospered with it. It has its limits, though. Predation only works against the other tribe. If you try it within your own tribe, you end up killing off your own tribe. You end up alienating the people within the tribe. Dictators are famously vulnerable to revolutions, wherein the nobodies that they have been exploiting rise up against them and execute them and chop off their heads. So predation works to some extent against another tribe or nation, but within a organization or a society, you want to try and minimize it so that you can get some solidarity and some cooperation out of the group, so that it can be a more effective predator against other groups. So we have these two strategies in human affairs. I call them a predatory strategy and a dignitarian strategy. The dignitarian, by that I mean treating everybody within your group with dignity, respecting them and not exploiting them. And what's happened is that we're moving to a global world, to a global village, to a single group within which residues of predation are very disruptive and very dangerous, as evidenced in the terrorism that we're dealing with now. So that's why I think we can learn to let go of a successful predatory strategy and gradually replace it with a strategy in which we take it for granted that every human being has equal dignity, and we respect that across racial, gender lines, across lines of sexual orientation and age and disability, nationality and religion, the rich and poor, immigrant and non-immigrant. We can respect dignity equally across all of these old divides and essentially bury the remnants of the predatory strategy. I think that's the agenda for the 21st century. It's laying that strategy to rest.